It often begins as a simple experiment, a 30-day challenge to test your self-control. You commit to total abstinence, no release, no ejaculation. Online communities call it semen retention or nofap, and they promise that holding it in will transform you into a more masculine, focused, and energetic version of yourself. The internet is flooded with anecdotes about skyrocketing testosterone and mental clarity. But while you are counting the days, your biology is reacting in ways you might not expect. There is a warning coming from urologists that often gets drowned out by the hype. The question is simple. Is your prostate designed to hoard this fluid, or is it designed to flush it out? If you stop the flow for a month, does the prostate simply go dormant, or are you creating a breeding ground for inflammation, calcification, and perhaps something much more serious? We are going to look past the internet myths and analyze the physiological reality. We will track the changes in your body week by week, examining the hormonal spikes, the pressure buildup, and the long-term data regarding cancer risks. This is the medical reality of what happens to your prostate if you stop ejaculating for 30 days. To understand the risks of stopping for 30 days, we first need to correct a common misconception about what the prostate actually is. It is not merely a passive valve or a muscle. It is an active, secretory gland about the size of a walnut, sitting directly beneath the bladder. Its primary function is to produce the fluid that carries and protects sperm. It is crucial to distinguish between sperm and semen. Sperm are produced in the testicles and make up only a tiny fraction, roughly 2 to 5%, of your total ejaculate volume. The vast majority of that volume comes from the seminal vesicles and the prostate gland. The prostate contributes a milky fluid rich in enzymes, zinc, and citric acid. This cocktail is designed to nourish sperm and help them survive the acidic environment of the reproductive tract. Here is where the physiology becomes important for the 30-day challenge. The prostate does not operate on an on-demand basis only. It is constantly working. The cells lining the prostatic ducts are continuously secreting fluid, regardless of whether you are sexually active or not. Under normal circumstances, regular ejaculation facilitates what urologists call turnover. It flushes out the old fluids and allows the gland to replenish them with fresh secretions. When you stop ejaculating entirely, you're effectively disrupting this turnover process. You have a factory that continues to run its production line 24 hours a day, but you have locked the shipping bay doors. This creates a state of physiological stagnation. The fluid doesn't just disappear immediately. It begins to accumulate within the complex network of ducts inside the gland. Understanding this accumulation is key to understanding everything that happens next, from the initial hormonal shifts to the physical discomfort that sets in by week 2. So, you have committed to the 30 days. What happens during that first week? For the vast majority of men, this period is driven by the promise of a hormonal upgrade. The internet is filled with claims that retaining semen is the ultimate biohack for testosterone. And scientifically, there is a grain of truth to this, but the full picture is often misunderstood. There is a famous study frequently cited in these communities that observed a significant physiological shift around the 1-week mark. Researchers found that after 7 days of abstinence, serum testosterone levels did indeed spike, reaching roughly 145% of the baseline. This is often the moment where men report feeling a surge of aggression, focus, and energy. However, what is often left out of the discussion is what happens on day 8. The study showed that this spike is temporary. Immediately after that 7th-day peak, levels tend to drop back down to normal baseline figures. The body adapts. It does not continue to compound testosterone infinitely. It seeks homeostasis. During this first week, as the production line continues without release, many men begin to worry about the physical volume of sperm being produced. They visualize a tank filling up to the brim. But the male reproductive system is highly efficient at recycling. If sperm are not ejaculated, they do not simply rot inside the body. They undergo a process called spermatophagy. The body breaks down the aging sperm cells, reabsorbing their proteins and nutrients back into the bloodstream. This is a natural biological recycling program that prevents the testicles from swelling indefinitely. From a strictly urological standpoint, the first 7 days of abstinence are benign. Your prostate is an elastic organ, capable of handling short-term variations in fluid volume without distress. The buildup you feel during this week is real, but at this stage, it is mostly sensory and psychological, a combination of unreleased sexual tension and that temporary hormonal fluctuation. The gland itself is not yet under significant duress. However, as you cross the threshold into the second and third weeks, the mechanics begin to change. The recycling system works well for sperm, but the prostatic fluid itself, that constant secretion we discussed earlier, starts to present a different set of challenges entirely. As you enter the second and third weeks of abstinence, the initial novelty fades, and the physical reality of accumulation sets in. This is where many men begin to report distinct physical discomfort, often localized in the scrotal region or deep within the pelvis. While the body can recycle sperm cells, it cannot simply reabsorb the accumulating seminal fluids at the same rate they are produced. The pressure begins to mount. This sensation is colloquially known as blue balls, but medically, it is often referred to as epididymal hypertension. When you are sexually aroused, which tends to happen frequently during a period of abstinence, blood rushes to the genitals, causing the testicles to increase in size and the prostate to become engorged. In a typical cycle, ejaculation releases this vascular tension, allowing blood flow to return to normal quickly. Without that release, the blood remains trapped in the genitals for longer periods, and the epididymis, the coil of tubes storing sperm, remains distended. This lingering vasocongestion creates a dull, aching heaviness that can radiate from the testicles up into the lower abdomen. During this phase, you are also likely to encounter the body's built-in safety valve, nocturnal emissions, or wet dreams. For those attempting a strict 30-day challenge, this can feel like a failure of discipline, but biologically, it is a necessary maintenance function. Because the prostate and seminal vesicles are becoming overfilled, the body triggers an involuntary reflex during sleep to purge the excess fluid. It is the physiological equivalent of a pressure cooker releasing steam. The nervous system senses the distension in the seminal vesicles and forces an evacuation to relieve the pressure on the gland. This is a critical point to understand. The body fights against total retention. It naturally strives for flow. While the aching associated with this congestion is generally not permanently damaging to the tissues, it is a signal of functional stress. The prostate is designed to be a flow-through system, not a storage tank. By the third week, that feeling of fullness in the pelvic floor is evidence that the gland is holding more fluid than is optimal for its daily function. And while this pressure is uncomfortable, the bigger concern for urologists isn't just the volume of the fluid, but what happens to the chemical composition of that fluid when it sits stagnant for too long. This brings us to the most significant medical concern regarding prolonged abstinence, the concept of prostatic stagnation. If you view the prostate as a biological filter, you can understand why urologists emphasize the importance of flow. The fluid produced by the prostate is chemically complex, containing extremely high concentrations of zinc, citrate, and various proteolytic enzymes. Under normal conditions, these compounds serve to protect the urinary tract and nourish sperm. However, the behavior of these chemicals changes when they are trapped within the gland for weeks at a time. The immediate risk associated with this lack of turnover is a condition known as congestive prostatitis. When most men hear the term prostatitis, they assume it refers to a bacterial infection that requires antibiotics. However, it is entirely possible to develop significant inflammation without a single bacterium being present. In a state of congestion, the sheer internal pressure and the accumulation of aging, degrading fluid can irritate the delicate epithelial lining of the prostatic ducts. This triggers a localized inflammatory response. The body's immune system begins to perceive the stagnant, concentrated fluid almost as a foreign irritant or a site of injury. This is why men on long retention streaks often report pelvic pain or burning sensations that mimic a urinary tract infection, yet when they visit a doctor, their urine cultures come back completely clean. Beyond acute inflammation, there is the mechanism of crystallization. Just as sediment settles at the bottom of a stagnant pond, minerals and proteins in the prostatic fluid can begin to precipitate out of the solution when they are not flushed regularly. Over time, This sediment can form tiny stones, scientifically referred to as prostatic calculi or corpora amylaceae. While a single 30-day challenge is unlikely to result in large, obstructive stones, it creates the ideal chemical environment for microcalcifications to begin nucleation. These microscopic stones can block smaller ducts within the gland, creating a vicious cycle where a blocked duct causes more fluid buildup, which causes more inflammation, which leads to further calcification. Furthermore, this stagnation complicates how we monitor prostate health. We know that ejaculation helps regulate the levels of prostate-specific antigen, or PSA. When you stop ejaculating, PSA can concentrate within the gland and, due to the increased internal pressure, leak into the bloodstream at higher rates. Men who practice long-term retention can sometimes show artificially elevated PSA levels during routine blood tests. This creates a diagnostic nightmare, leading to false alarms, anxiety, and unnecessary biopsies for cancer scares. The gland becomes boggy, tender, and inflamed, not because it is cancerous, but because it is effectively clogged. This chronic inflammatory state is the crux of the medical argument against long-term retention, and it serves as the physiological basis for the most serious warning regarding prostate health: the potential link between frequency of release and cancer risk. If inflammation and calcification are the immediate concerns of a boggy prostate, the long-term anxiety for every man is cancer. This is where the conversation shifts from theoretical biology to hard epidemiological data. For years, the medical community debated whether abstinence preserved vitality or increased disease risk. To answer this, researchers launched one of the most comprehensive investigations in men's health history, the Harvard Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. This study tracked nearly 32,000 men over the course of 18 years, providing a massive dataset on lifestyle habits and health outcomes. The researchers specifically looked at the correlation between ejaculation frequency and the development of prostate cancer. The participants were categorized into groups based on their monthly frequency, ranging from those who ejaculated 4 to 7 times a month to those who reported at least 21 times a month. The results, published and subsequently updated, revealed a statistically significant trend. Men in the high-frequency group, those ejaculating at least 21 times a month, demonstrated a roughly 20% reduction in the risk of developing prostate cancer compared to those in the lower frequency groups. This data suggests a dose-dependent relationship. Quite literally, the more frequent the clearance, the lower the risk appeared to be. But why would this be the case? Urologists and oncologists point back to the concept of chemical stagnation we discussed earlier, often referred to as the prostate stagnation hypothesis. The prostate is an organ that concentrates substances from the blood. Unfortunately, it concentrates not only zinc and citrate, but also environmental toxins and carcinogens found in our diet and surroundings. Chemical compounds from cigarette smoke, charred meats, and industrial pollutants can accumulate in prostatic fluid. The theory posits that without regular ejaculation, these carcinogenic substances remain in contact with the delicate cells of the prostate lining for prolonged periods. It creates a scenario of chronic exposure. By ejaculating frequently, a man is essentially flushing the system, reducing the dwell time of these toxins within the gland. It is a mechanism of clearance. It is important to approach this data with scientific rigor. Critics of the study point out the difference between correlation and causation. It is possible that men who ejaculate 21 times a month are simply healthier overall. They might have better cardiovascular health, higher testosterone levels, or lower stress, all of which protect against cancer. However, even when researchers adjusted the data to account for age, diet, and lifestyle factors, the protective benefit of frequent ejaculation remained consistent. While a 30-day challenge is unlikely to give you cancer, the data strongly suggests that a lifestyle of long-term repression contradicts the prostate's biological requirement for regular clearance to maintain cellular health. Does this mean every man needs to adhere to a strict schedule of 21 ejaculations a month to avoid disease? Not necessarily. Science is rarely black and white, and despite the data on prostate health, there are valid medical and psychological reasons to press the pause button. In the realm of fertility, for instance, urologists frequently prescribe short periods of abstinence. If you are preparing for a semen analysis or trying to conceive, constant ejaculation can lower your total sperm count per volume. The general medical recommendation is an abstinence window of 2 to 5 days. This allows the sperm reserves to replenish enough to maximize the chances of fertilization without waiting so long that the DNA begins to fragment or degrade. It is a delicate balance between quantity and quality. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the psychological argument behind the no-FAP movement. While the prostate may benefit from frequent release, the brain's dopaminergic system can suffer from hyperstimulation. For men struggling with compulsive sexual behavior or desensitization, a 30-day reset can be a powerful tool for mental health. In these cases, the temporary physical discomfort of a congested prostate is a trade-off made for the sake of psychological recalibration. The takeaway here is not that abstinence is inherently dangerous in the short term, nor that ejaculation is a cure-all. The body is resilient. It can handle a 30-day drought just as it can handle a period of high activity. The danger lies in the extremes: chronic, year-long repression that invites inflammation, or compulsive behavior that disrupts daily life. The biological goal is not holding a high score, it is regulation. So, what is the final verdict on the 30-day challenge? If you stop ejaculating for a month, you are not going to cause permanent damage to your prostate. The body is capable of managing that short-term stress through nocturnal emissions and reabsorption. However, the idea that indefinite retention creates a superphysiological state is a myth that ignores basic anatomy. The biological reality is that your prostate is a secretory gland designed for turnover. While the first week may offer a transient hormonal peak, extending that abstinence leads to congestion, potential inflammation, and a higher risk of calcification. The most robust data we have, spanning decades of research, points in one direction: frequent clearance is protective. It flushes out carcinogens, reduces inflammatory pressure, and keeps the ductal system healthy. But this raises a frustrating reality for thousands of men. You now know that clearing the pipes is vital for your prostate health, but what if your body simply isn't cooperating? What if the blood flow required for that function just isn't there like it used to be? If you are dealing with that struggle, you need to see a presentation about a bizarrely simple 7-second morning ritual. It involves a purple hardening tonic that targets the root cause of that blockage, effectively unclogging the hose to restore natural, robust function without dangerous pills. I've pinned a link to a video explaining exactly how this works in the top comment below. Or you can simply point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen right now to watch it immediately. If you want to protect your prostate, you need to maintain healthy flow, so go check that out. If you are doing this for a mental reset or spiritual discipline, listen to your body. If you experience pain or significant discomfort, that is not weakness leaving the body. It is biology signaling a need for release. You do not need to hit a specific quota to be healthy, but you should not fear normal function. For the sake of your long-term health, keep the flow moving. If you want to understand more about how your body actually works, separated from the internet hype, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We will see you in the next deep dive.